And when we first chatted, I took a note because I thought it was really interesting. You said, so I quote, if you're not becoming the bottleneck in your business, where you reach a stage you can fire yourself, then something is wrong. Do you remember that?
Of course, believe in it.
Why is it so important for you?
It's kind of, excuse me, it's one of these ideas, or one of the guiding principles is you're generalist to your specialist, right? And so as a founder, you can be very good at a lot of things, but ultimately at some point, though, like every specific skill, if it ends up being important to the business over the long term, becomes so important that it needs the basically full-time focus of somebody. And so if you're not the bottleneck, it means one of two things. It means either that you are not recruiting people who are better than you, which is kind of an identity problem for a founder, or it means that you haven't really, that particular skill set is something that you don't understand completely. And so, you should, I always say that, like, you need to know as a founder everything in your company well enough to know who not to hire for it. Yeah. Because, you sit down, if you don't speak, it's like speaking a language. If you sit down with somebody and you don't speak the language, it's very hard to kind of, when they communicate, to understand what they're saying, what is right and what is wrong. And so you kind of get into the mode where you need to learn about everything enough where you can evaluate whether or not they can do the task you want. And so your job is to do that in every single major skill, and then find somebody who just is obsessed with whatever that thing they have to solve for is. And yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
So, but when do you know when it's time to fire yourself?
Well, if that was easy, there wouldn't be wouldn't be a bunch of podcasts on it. It'd just be done. I think that's the hardest part. It's that, like, it's not even when you need to do it. It's when, like, a lot of this stuff you don't really know until kind of historically. It's like, what is I think it's Steve Jobs quote. It's like, you can only connect the lines looking backwards. You can never connect, or you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And so don't get too down on yourself, or don't think too hard about, is this the exact time to hire for this? I think you want to do is, if you can afford it, and if it's critical to your business, you always want to be trying to find somebody who's great. And you end up finding that it's much more important to find very good people who understand the thing than it is to fill a role with the person who may not be, the cultural fit, or may not kind of raise the company. And so I think what it is once you understand the role, even if you're not hiring for it, you should be talking to as many people as you can who are really obsessed and could potentially be great in that thing. And what ends up happening is, sometimes you make a hire longer than you want, but often what'll happen is you'll meet somebody who you cannot believe exists as far as, like, talent or fit for what you want to do. And I think that's probably the moment. It's less about the company and more about, is this person, as long as you can afford it, is this person going to make everything better? And so it's kind of a gray process. I wouldn't think about it as much as the role, as much as finding, great people and understanding how to evaluate them around the thing that you're trying to solve for.
You said something interesting. You said, as long as you can afford it. And I want to touch base on that, because this is a big issue. What if you can't afford it?
Well, it's tough. I think that's a little more complicated than it would seem. There's obviously, when you historically talk about this kind of stuff, you're thinking about cash, right?
Yeah.
What it costs to do it. But there's other vectors of affordability. If sometimes you can't tell, but it could be you're so trash at a certain skill set, or you're so rudimentary in this thing that you kind of only sort of understand that is the bottleneck. Shout out to the title, the bottleneck of growth. And so there's current looking affordability or sometimes you get, like, sometimes you basically have to mortgage the future, but you got to make a bet. Maybe that's a better way to describe it. And so if you're hiring right, or you're hiring somebody and this particular problem is critical to your business, it often should. Sometimes 1 + 1 = 3. And sometimes you test, and sometimes honestly you do it and you evaluate it and then you kill it. Like, one of the things that makes this hard, it's tactically hard to build a business for sure. But I think the harder thing is that you're constantly having to double back on things that worked before that are not working in the future, or things that you have 40% of the information. And so from the affordability perspective, like, there's not an answer. It's probably more just go with your gut, take risks, test as much as you can, but be as willing to test something as you are to kind of evaluate whether or not it's working.